right, Sonny, welcome to the BlockHash podcast. How you doing, man?
Good. Thank you for having me on. Excited.
Yeah, excited to have you here. Um, and plus, Bitcoin's almost like at an all-time high, so it's a great day in general.
Always a good day.
Oh yeah. Any thoughts on the fact that an ETF for Bitcoin actually exists now on the New York Stock Exchange? It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, I feel like I remember like the 2017 bull run was like kicked off by like the rumor of like the Winklevoss ETF. And it's like, wow, okay, 4 years later, and it's finally okay, finally have one now. Okay, there we
Yeah.
go. Took a while, but we got there.
Yeah, it did take a while. The SEC definitely wouldn't let that go through. I'm surprised they stepped back and now they're allowing it. I think Grayscale is going to do one too, with actual
Mhm,
physical Bitcoin in it. So should be interesting.
mhm. Yeah.
Anyways, before we jump into talking about Osmosis and everything that you guys are doing right now, tell me a little bit more about yourself and your background. Like, how did you get into crypto? How did you get into this space?
Yeah, sure. So there's a rolling stages of what it means to like get into crypto, right? But I guess like my first like time I was like got like really more involved with it was um I was a freshman at UC Berkeley, and I heard I was studying computer science and political economy, and there was this little Bitcoin club there, and so I was like reached out to them and I was like, hey, can I like do stuff, that like this is the perfect combination of the, the two things I was interested in. And so I just started like helping out there, and learning more. I signed up to then teach a class on it because, um, for me, when I want to learn something, the best way to learn something is to sign up to teach it, because if you have to teach something, you better fucking learn it. And so that was my like technique that I always used. And so yeah, so we started teaching a class on like Bitcoin and stuff. Sorry. And then yeah, we started teaching that class for a couple. I taught it for 2 semesters, and I just kind of like learned a lot of the internals of Bitcoin. And then the summer after my sophomore year, I was interning first at a company called Consensus, which is one of the big Ethereum development companies, and then kind of got bored of my internship halfway through the summer. But then I got really interested in proof of stake while I was there, and so I started like spent most of the summer just researching proof of stake stuff, and I learned about Tendermint, and I was like, wow, this consensus protocol is cool. And so I reached out to the Tendermint team and started working with them, and I was learning so much that come fall I was like, this is I'm learning way more here than I am at school. So I dropped out and started working on Tendermint and Cosmos full time.
What did you do when you worked on Tendermint?
Yeah, so I was working on a bunch of different things. So I was there pretty soon after the Cosmos ICO. We were uh, I worked on parts up and down the stack, basically, help build the Cosmos SDK. My role was a research scientist,
Hmm.
and to this day, I'm still trying to figure out what that role means.
Sure.
But it involved a lot of development, a lot of like research and spec work, and like designing things. I think that's sort of the part that I actually love the most, is mostly on like the architecture and designing kind of things. But then also it was also like a lot of evangelism as well. I was sort of the one out there in the community teaching everyone about Cosmos, and be like, hey guys, the interchain, like this is going to be so cool. And yeah, just like growing the Cosmos ecosystem that way as well.
Yeah, I heard good things about the Cosmos ecosystem. What about it do you like so much, or that's kind of drawn you towards building around that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I was working on like Ethereum stuff before that, and before that I was really in Bitcoin, and Cosmos always almost in a way felt like a little bit of the synthesis of the two.
Hmm.
And it was like, hey, everything that's going on in Ethereum is super cool, like all these applications being built, but I just didn't see them as being scalable. And I mean that both from like a technical scalability, but also social scalability. And so what like, I believe that like communities will want their own blockchains, and that, the more things that you have in one system, the less scalable it becomes. I kind of put it actually in this like sort of narrative where it's like, okay, I treat like the generation of one of blockchains as these like kingdoms, right? Or like small city states where you have like Bitcoin and like Saya and Namecoin. They all have their own little applications, but they're not really like, you can't use your Bitcoin to buy a name on Namecoin. Then Ethereum came along, and I call this like the empire model, which is like, hey, let's build one big system that sort of like puts all applications within its domain, and then you can get a lot of composability. So I can like mix and match and like use applications together, but then you lose out on a lot of like sovereignty and things like that. And so Cosmos I see as sort of the third generation. And what I mean by that is like, it kind of, I see it it's the nation state model of blockchains, where it's like, hey, can you get like, in the world today we have high levels of economic integration without political integration. And so I think we could do the same with blockchain. Can we have a network of many blockchains that are still interacting with each other? We can send tokens between them, we can send data between them, we can send, have them like build complex applications by taking these like building blocks, but they still are on their own independent blockchains and have that level of sovereignty.
Yeah, taking that into account, how do you think it stacks up next to other blockchains like Cardano or Polkadot or Tezos that also have a lot of potential viability?
Yeah, so I think most of those systems, I'd say like Cardano and Tezos and Solana and stuff, they kind of are continuing along the empire model and trying to make maybe better empires. They're building more scalable models and stuff. But I think that in the end, that's ultimately non-scalable. Things like Solana are doing a great job at like really pushing the boundaries on how scalable a single blockchain can be. But inevitably they will hit some boundaries at some point. And I think like, some things like Polkadot, for example, I think Cosmos and Polkadot are sort of more similar, more in that, in this model of like, oh, okay, we're going to go towards more of a multi-chain future. And then I think they approach it from like a little bit different directions, where Cosmos is really more focused on like sovereign blockchains, while Polkadot kind of, I don't know. I call Polkadot somewhere in the middle between like the empire model and nations. Like maybe it's like the EU or something. I think that's like it's like somewhere in the middle. It's like not empire model, but it's not quite fully sovereign state. It's like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all those fully develop and play out over time. Obviously, all the tension's kind of on Bitcoin right now, but I'm sure that we're going to enter an alt season pretty soon, and a lot of money and attention will start flowing into those projects. So I think they'll start shaping out as we get into the next year. I want to talk about Osmosis as well, because you're one of the co-founders for that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about what it is and what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah. So around last year, so about almost a little bit over a year ago now, I left the Tendermint team, like the core Cosmos team, to just sort of start doing different things. And during the time, DeFi summer was happening on Ethereum, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. How do we bring DeFi to Cosmos? And so me and one of my co-founders, Dave, we spent a while just like, we're like, okay, what do we want to solve? Like, we're like, hey, let's build, when we started working in the space, there was 3 things we wanted to solve, right? There was like proof of stake, scalability, and privacy. And it's like, I feel like we did I think we've basically solved proof of stake at this point. Like, I don't think anything launches today without using proof of stake. Scalability, it's well underway. I think there's a lot of people working on cool solutions, and I think it's just like a lot of people working on it, and it's like coming along well. But then the last one was privacy. So we're like, okay, let's like focus in on this privacy and figure out what we want to solve with this. And so the specific thing that we decided to focus in on, which we saw like there was a high demand for, was a feature we're calling like mempool privacy. And so what that means is, if you've been following MEV and like front running on Ethereum, it's like this idea that like people are reading other people's transactions in the mempool and then like front running them and sandwiching them and like extracting value by knowing that data. And so what we built was a solution that makes it basically all the transactions are encrypted before they hit the chain. and only once they hit the chain, they're like decrypted and executed. So this basically prevents any of that sort of front running stuff from happening. And that was sort of like the original thing that he and I were like focused on. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, literally, there were Josh and Tony. They were sort of the creators of this wallet called Kepler, which was like the biggest wallet in the Cosmos ecosystem. And they, as a hackathon project, sort of built the MVP of Osmosis. They, at a hackathon, they like took the balancer code, or not the code, but they took their paper and they implemented it in the Cosmos SDK, which is the framework to build Cosmos apps. And so we started sort of working with them to sort of get the threshold encryption into that project. And we kind of like, basically, we ended up merging teams essentially to sort of work on Osmosis. And we had been working on it since about January, and we launched in about June of this year. And, you know, it's, and since then, you know, we're still very much focused on our, you know, North Star sort of like getting the privacy into this DEXs, but then we're also working on a number of other cool features around like innovations around like staking and just like new DeFi primitives that we're building, as well as just we're doing a lot of like the Cosmos, like a lot of just like growing the Cosmos ecosystem and like making the UX of like the interchain just really, you know, we have a mission to show the world that the UX of the interchain will be as good as like dealing with a single chain. And so we've been working a lot on like getting the features needed to make that possible.
Got it. What are you guys trying to do in terms of DeFi?
Yeah, so right now we're primarily a DEX. So we're a DEX.
Okay.
We are an AMM DEX specifically. We're heavily inspired by Balancer, but then we also take elements of a bunch of different protocols like Sushi and Curve and Thorchain and things like that. But yeah, so we basically, and then as we go forward, we're just working on new DeFi protocols to make it easier, you know, to expand the functionalities of our DEX. So my belief is that like if decentralized exchanges want to compete with like centralized exchanges, you know, centralized exchanges offer like a series of products that are sort of all packaged into this one experience. So like one that like the trading infrastructure is just one thing that they do, but they also do like, you know, what are other things they do? They like often provide like discovery tools. They provide, you know, initial access to tokens. They provide custody solutions. They provide like all the fiat on ramps. And so it's like we're trying to figure out how do we build decentralized versions of like all of these like pieces so we can provide that best UX to a full product to like all the users.
Yeah, can you explain what an AMM is, an automated moneymaker? I'm sure some people may be familiar with it, but it's kind of a new term.
Yeah. So AMM, it stands for Automated Market Maker. And what an automated market maker is it's a new format of exchange. And how it works is it was, instead of having an order book, like, you know, people place orders and you have market makers placing orders and people, you know, takers who like make market orders and buy those. What an AMM is you have two main classes of users. You have the LPs and you have the traders. And so LPs are people who want to basically be the market makers. It's an algorithmic market maker where what you do is you just let's say there's two assets in a pool for a specific pair. You take both the assets, you put them into a smart contract, and the smart contract will use an algorithm to do market making for you. You'll be market making according to the algorithm. And you know, and what you do, the reason you do this is that you'll earn the swap fee. So you'll have traders now who come in and they say, hey, I want to trade asset A for B. The algorithm will tell the trader, hey, here's the price that we'll sell it to you at. And the trader will be like, okay, and they'll pay a fee on that. And they'll basically, the algorithm will use your assets to sell them tokens. And so by doing this, you earn the swap fee, but you take on there's a lot of risk that goes into LPing as well. But what it did was it sort of democratized this like market making process where okay, you don't have to be this like super professional like market maker. That's like you can be a more passive player and still like provide liquidity and help like the ecosystem and like benefit from it.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. All the things that are being done with DeFi lately. And it feels like there's a DeFi summer, obviously last summer, and then there was one again this summer. And I don't know if it's relegated to just seasons, but it's very interesting how decentralized finance is really starting to play out and push back in exchanges and offer the same kind of liquidity and products that you get to traders and to people that want to invest. And it's really fun watching that space grow. Is that something you guys want to stay in DeFi and have a DEX, or do you want to also branch out and maybe do tokens or NFTs or a more specific use case? What's kind of the future for Osmosis?
Yeah, I mean, I think our focus is primarily on DeFi right now, as well as just like this general interchain infrastructure. Like I said, our thesis is interchain DeFi, and so we kind of have to focus on both of those sides. But on on the other stuff, I think like NFTs, like I think we are seeing this process right now where they're slowly becoming more and more financialized. And I think like the NFT market right now, like especially like I think that what's happening right now is people are building new DeFi tools around NFTs. So you see things like fractionalization, you see new ideas like floor perps, and all these like cool ways of like you borrowing against NFTs. And we see like this is like a new DeFi primitives being built around these, and the primitives that are being built around these like art NFTs. But we have to imagine that in the future, like more and more financial assets are going to be placed on chain, and many of them will have to be structured as NFTs. So, for example, a home or something, right? A home deed that would probably have to be an NFT. And like a lot of the DeFi tools that we're using that are being built right now for the current class of NFTs will be generalized to then, deal with all this new financial asset. So really, I see these two sort of ecosystems like converging going forward. And then, yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I do imagine they will converge at some point. I know there's a lot of people trying to find a way to properly appraise NFTs so that you can do something like that. So you can borrow against it or lend or fractionalize it in some kind of way, incorporate it into DeFi. So I think that's definitely an avenue for NFTs. It'd be cool to see you guys do that in the future too, if it becomes, viable. What about like tokenized securities or stuff like that?
Yeah, so we're not really focused on like, the issuance of tokenized securities ourselves, but like, I think there might be a couple of projects in the Cosmos ecosystem working on things like that. And, our goal is, we're just focused on building infrastructure and like, it's a permissionless platform. You can bring over any sort of, token that matches the IBC standard, and it will be compatible with that.
Got it. Moving away from that for a second, I imagine, or I know you're one of the co-hosts on the Epicenter podcast, correct? As a fellow podcaster, what's it like being a podcaster in the crypto space? It's very different. It's very, very niche. But you have some incredible conversations, meet some very interesting people. What's it been like for you?
Yeah. I guess, similar to what I said at the beginning, when I want to learn something, I sign up to teach it. And so I guess like, podcasting with like, interviewing is not quite the same as teaching, but it's pretty similar, right? And I feel it's like Epicenter is really fun because it gives me the opportunity to like keep up with the entire ecosystem. Because I feel like otherwise, oftentimes I'll be just like very like head in the sand, focused, like building what I'm focused on or focused on what I'm building, super deep in what we're doing. But it's like, all right, once a week, I get an opportunity to like, go learn about something going on in NFT, or go learn about something going on like a different ecosystem, or something going on in like the social crypto ecosystem or something like that. So I think that's sort of been like the really nice thing about Epicenter is it's just like a constant learning tool.
I'm very much the same. I learned so much just doing a podcast. It's kind of like the whole reason I did it. I just wanted to learn more, and then you start having great conversations. You meet so many interesting people. And I don't know, it's just fantastic,
Hmm.
medium of exchange of information, I guess.
What's been your favorite episode you've done?
I've done so many. I don't think it's fair for me to pick, especially live.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I'm not gonna pick. That's not fair. But I
Yeah.
enjoy all of them because I always learn something new. And this space is
Hmm.
moving like crazy all the time,
Hmm.
and changing every single day. So every time I have someone on, which is almost every single day, I'm learning
Hmm.
something. So I know I take great pride and value in being able to have that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Before we wrap up, I want to get more of like a high
Hmm.
level opinion from you.
Hmm.
Obviously, said it a few times. Bitcoin's like almost, about to break its all time high. A lot of people are very bullish. That can also be a dangerous thing. People getting in at the wrong time. Where do you think the market's kind of at right now? Do you think it's, probably going to do very well going into the end of the year? Do you think it's just building momentum for next year? Do you think there's potential worries that people are going to get in at the wrong time and might just get
Hmm.
completely hammered? Or do you have an idea, in your opinion, of the direction of the market?
Um, so I will just say I am a terrible trader, which is why I don't trade. That's just why I'm like, okay, I've learned a long time ago that I'm not the greatest at that, and so instead you know, I I'll just hold my Bitcoin and my ETH and whatever, and I'll just hold it for many years on end. But that being said, I don't know. I mean, I think like we mentioned, the ETF stuff is pretty interesting. Um, we'll be interesting to see, like, you know the meme for a long time has been, oh, when the ETF comes, the institutions are coming, right? And it's like, but I
Hmm.
wonder what institutions actually want to use the ETF for. I wonder how much like short pressure there is on that's going to be like unleashed because of the access to this ETF. So that could be interesting to see. Um, but
What's crazy is about like an
mhm.
hour ago, before even jumping on here, I saw that the volume, trade volume already for the ETF was over like $500 million.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
it's definitely getting some attention. But yeah, it was
Mhm.
kind of a joke for a while. Like, is this going to be the make or break thing for Bitcoin? Like an ETF, really? I don't really think it was ever that important, but apparently for some
Yeah.
people it was. Maybe it's just legitimizing, but
Yeah.
we live in a world where Bitcoin's in an ETF now.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and otherwise, I mean, I think that as long as the ecosystem still building real products and like, or as long as it continues to build real products, yeah, we will think if we're all gonna make it.
What about the future of DeFi? You seem to really like it and kind of be in that space anyways
Mhm.
within blockchain. How do you see that developing? Going into next year, there's a lot of good things, a lot of positive things, a lot of competition, a lot of new
Mhm.
ideas. Do you think that that's going to carry over very well? Do you think possible regulations could hold that back?
Mhm.
Could be some pushback from big exchanges or government in different parts of the world. I don't know. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Yeah, so I think DeFi is going to continue to develop. I think there's going to be, I think that there's going to be a lot more new stuff that's being developed. I think there's actually a whole like, the design space is still like, there's still a lot more to explore in my opinion, and so I think we're going to push into that more and more. I think the one big thing that I see that's coming is going to be, I think as DeFi goes multi-chain, I think, 4 years ago when Cosmos used to be like, oh, multi-chain is the future, or like, uh, like everyone was like, oh, no, 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 Ethereum is gonna scale, right? And it's like, well, now it's like I feel like now it's like, in a way, we were kind of definitely right about that, and like, I don't think it's hard to dispute with that. But now, I guess the next big thing is like, what's the future of interchain going to be? Is it going to be like everything on? You're gonna have the generalized chains and the same DeFi apps deploying everywhere. So you see things like, Sushi, they're going around on every single chain, and they're like, okay, we're going to deploy on Polygon, and then on Arbitrum, and then on BSC, and then on like, we're going to just deploy everywhere, or do you see things, or is it going to be like application specific chains? So like an example of this would be like compound chain, right? Compound chain is like, oh, we're not going to go deploy Compound on every protocol. Instead, we're going to build Compound chain and have that connect to every other chain. And so Osmosis is sort of in that same realm. That I call that the interchain world versus the multi-chain. And so just random terms I made up. But
That's
yeah,
okay.
so I think that's sort of what we're going to see is like going to be the next big thing of seeing like which direction DeFi goes. Is it going to be more towards an interchain future or a multi-chain future?
Cool. It's exciting, man. It's going to be an exciting future either where it goes. Anyways, good place to wrap up. Sonny, thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast and, elaborate on Osmosis and Cosmos and, your background, Tendermint, Epicenter, your thoughts on DeFi, your thoughts on the market. Really appreciate it. Stay on for just a second so I can talk to you. Otherwise, love to talk to you again in the future. Let me know.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. See ya.